evening, former Chancellor Philip Hammond has accused Boris Johnson of making it impossible to get any type of deal with the EU, while the Prime Minister has hit back, accusing MPs in the EU of working together to block Brexit entirely. RTK Shadi Ewes-Dashley joins me now with the latest. So Shadi, a bit of tit for tat going on here.
Well, you could say that, yes, as the former Chancellor Philip Hammond has accused the Prime Minister Boris Johnson of trying to wreck any chance of a new deal with the European Union by setting the bar too high and demanding too much from the European Union, who would never agree to those such terms. Now, in a letter, he drew attention to the red lines put down by Boris Johnson, referring specifically to scrapping the backstop altogether, which some are saying is simply too much of an ask for the EU to agree to, considering the bloc have ruled it out themselves many a time. Hammond then goes on to seek reassurances from the Prime Minister that a deal with the EU is still the #1 preferred option, before of course reminding Johnson that he had previously called the possibility of a no deal as less than 1,000,000 to 1. So the aim of this intervention from Philip Hammond to Boris Johnson is to pressure him to work towards a deal with the European Union rather than continuing this stalemate standoff position with the bloc, especially as he believes that a no-deal Brexit would actually also be equating to denying the will of the people.
Well, leaving the EU without a deal would be just as much a betrayal of the referendum result as not leaving at all.
Now, there is, of course, a majority in Parliament against a no-deal Brexit scenario. However, it's unclear what mechanism they could all unite around to actually stop it. Now, Philip Hammond, he, of course, resigned in anticipation of Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister, and he believes, and he says he's very confident that Parliament can find a means to stop a no-deal Brexit and stop Boris Johnson in his tracks. However, for this opinion, for this letter today, he has been accused of going against the government's default position, going against Boris Johnson, and even frustrating and obstructing preparations of a no-deal scenario. Boris Johnson's response to all of this, though, he says that Remainer MPs are merely linking up with the European Union and in trying to block Brexit.
There's a terrible kind of collaboration, as it were, going on between people who think they can block Brexit in Parliament and our European friends. And our European friends are not moving in their opposition to, in their willingness to compromise. They're not compromising at all on the withdrawal agreement, even though it's been thrown out 3 times. They're sticking with every letter, every comma of the withdrawal agreement, including the backstop, because they still think that Brexit can be blocked in Parliament.
Well, those comments were made on a Q&A session live on Facebook, a sort of people's PMQs, if you will. Though, unlike Prime Minister's questions in Parliament, Boris Johnson was not given an opportunity to reply, and therefore he was not challenged on his replies. Meanwhile, there are further blows, though, to Boris Johnson's no deal. We've heard from the Speaker of the House of Commons, John Bercow, and he says that he will fight with every breath to prevent proroguing or suspending Parliament. Plus, we've also heard from across the pond, Speaker of the House of Representatives over there, US Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. She says that a US-UK trade deal will not get through Congress if Brexit undermines the Good Friday Agreement. So what we're seeing is many spanners in the works for Boris Johnson's do-or-die Brexit.
Shadia, thank you very much indeed for an update on today's developments. Well, for more on the latest war of words over the Brexit negotiations, I'm joined by a senior partner at Brexit Partners, Professor John Ryan. John, good to see you here in the studio. Philip Hammond then accusing Boris Johnson of scuppering a deal, but there again, we've got to consider that when Hammond was in government, didn't even get a deal in the 3 years.
Well, they had a deal on the table, but it wasn't workable in terms of Parliament, because on the one side you had the Brexiteers who didn't like the deal because of the backstop, and on the other side you had people who didn't like the deal because it didn't keep us integrated as much as they would have liked in the European Union.
But Boris Johnson does want a deal, doesn't he? He's merely playing hardball in order to get the EU to back down.
I don't see any sign that he wants a deal. Where's the sign that he wants a deal? He hasn't spoken to anybody. They're still discussing whether he's going to meet the Irish Prime Minister. So he hasn't really done anything tangible in actually getting a deal.
What about this idea, though, that MPs are collaborating with Europe? Surely if the EU knew that MPs could stop a no-deal outcome, then why would the EU even think of any concessions?
Well, they've got they're not going to make a concession about the backstop, because that's what Boris Johnson wants. And as your reporter mentioned, that's not going to happen. And if there's a no-deal exit, there's not going to be a deal with the EU, and there's certainly not going to be this much lauded deal with the United States, because Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic House of Representatives would block that because of the threat to the Good Friday Agreement. So he's not actually seeming to push out any kind of deal at all. You know, you might think it might be a free trade agreement on the Canada model. Nothing of that has been discussed at the moment. What this all looks like is a lot of talk, a lot of campaigning on issues, crime, health, Brexit, and we're going towards an election campaign in the autumn.
Yeah, it may be, well, of course, after Brexit, though, that could happen, couldn't it? Where Boris Johnson could call an election, and of course there could be that election period during Brexit.
Well, yeah, that would be strange, and I think that a vote of no confidence will go in there. But it'd be interesting to see where Hammond, after writing these letters, the article in the Times, the letter, and speaking to the media, whether he would be willing to vote against the Conservative
because
government.
if he's one of several, then that really could scupper Johnson. But then again, why would Tory MPs open the door for an opposition?
Maybe to, I mean, if you were a bit conspiratorial about this, I mean, what's going to happen after Brexit is not going to be very edible for any party to actually take on board, any government. If, for example, Johnson was able to get there past the 31st and we had Brexit, and then he was to govern after that, I don't see that ending very well.
Why not? Surely, is Project Fear kicking in here again? Will it be really as bad a no-deal outcome as many people fear, including you?
Yeah, I think that all the data is showing now. So when we had a situation when a lot of these over-egged predictions of gloom 3 years ago, we were in a very benign, reasonably well-working global economy. Now things are going seriously wrong all over the place, and now we can see foreign direct investment has slowed down.
But exactly, that's why surely in a no-deal outcome we're going to get all sorts of side deals, all sorts of deals happening after Brexit to ensure that trade continues. Well, we haven't even got to the trade talks yet at this stage. Surely they will happen if there's a no-deal or not.
Yeah, but people will want something from you. So if it's with India, we'd have to change our visa regulations. China, we better not intervene in Hong Kong. US trade deal won't happen because of a no deal and the threat to the Good Friday Agreement, and we won't have a deal with the EU. So it's no deal so far on the table that would be workable.
John, good to hear your view on all of this. Thank you for joining us here in the studio, Professor John Ryan.